The morning after the wedding, my mother-in-law loaded every gift into her car. "It's family money," she said. "It stays in the family." My husband didn't correct her. I looked at everyone and said something that made the room go completely quiet. The morning after my wedding, my mother-in-law was loading every single wedding gift into her SUV. I stood in the hotel parking lot still wearing yesterday's clothes while she stacked boxes like she was packing groceries. The card box from the reception was already sitting in the front seat. My husband Ethan was standing a few feet away watching. Not helping me. Not stopping her. Just watching. For a moment I honestly thought I had walked into the middle of some misunderstanding. I said, "Why are the gifts in your car?" Linda didn't even pause. She shut the trunk halfway and said, "It's family money. It stays in the family." The way she said it made it sound like it was some old rule everyone understood except me. I waited for Ethan to say something. Anything. He didn't. Linda kept going through the remaining bags on the pavement. "We covered most of the wedding costs," she said. "So the gifts help even things out." Her daughter Amanda nodded like this was completely normal. My brain was still catching up to what was happening. Those gifts weren't just random presents. My aunt had given us a check. My grandmother had brought a thick envelope and told me it was for the beginning of our life together. My dad's co-workers had pooled money together and slipped it into a card during the reception. All of it was sitting in Linda's car. And my husband was silent. I said, "Those were given to Ethan and me." Linda finally looked directly at me. "You're part of the family now. The family handles the finances." That sentence sat in the air for a few seconds. I looked at Ethan again. He didn't defend me. He didn't question her. He didn't even look uncomfortable. That was the moment something shifted in my head. Not slowly, easily. Because if he could stand there the morning after our wedding and let his mother take everything that had been given to us, then this wasn't going to be the last time something like this happened. This was just the first time I was seeing it clearly. Linda grabbed the last gift bag and placed it in the trunk. "That should be everything." She closed the trunk and brushed her hands together like the situation was finished. That was when I spoke again. "Hey," I said. "Then let's open the card box first." Linda frowned. "Why?" I pointed at the front seat of her SUV. "Because before the reception ended last night, I switched it." Everyone looked at me. Ethan said, "Switched what?" "The cards." The silence that followed felt heavy. I said, "The box in your car isn't the real one." Amanda let out a small laugh like she thought I was joking. Linda didn't laugh. "What are you talking about?" I looked at Ethan. "The real envelopes aren't there." His expression changed immediately. "What did you do?" I shrugged. "I just thought it would be safer if I held on to them." Linda walked to the passenger door and stared at the card box like it might suddenly prove me wrong. Then she turned back to me. "Where are they?" I looked at all of them standing there. And that was when I said the thing that made the entire parking lot go quiet. "I already deposited them this morning." Ethan stared at me. "You what?" I nodded. "Into my account." And the reaction that followed was the first real glimpse of the family I had just married into. For a few seconds no one said anything. Linda was the first to move. She opened the passenger door and pulled out the card box. She lifted the lid and started going through the envelopes. Her movements slowed. Then she stopped completely. "These are blank." Amanda grabbed one and opened it. There was a folded piece of paper inside with nothing written on it. Ethan looked at me. "You're joking, right?" "No." Linda closed the box and set it on the hood of her car. "You took the money." "Yes." "And you already deposited it." "Yes." Another long silence followed. Cars from other wedding guests were leaving the parking lot, but nobody around us was paying attention to that. Ethan rubbed his face. "Katie, why would you do that?" I almost laughed at that question. Because I had a feeling something like this might happen. Linda shook her head. "This is unbelievable." He turned to Ethan. "Do you hear this? She's hiding money from the family." Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead he looked at me like he was trying to understand something. "How much was there?" "About 42,000. That got everyone's attention. Amanda said, 42,000? I nodded. "A little more actually." Linda crossed her arms. "And you think that belongs only to you?" I didn't raise my voice. "It belongs to us. The couple people gave it to." Linda gave a short laugh. "You mean the wedding Ethan's parents paid for?" Here was the part she kept repeating. We spent nearly $50,000 on that wedding, she said. That money helps cover it. I looked at Ethan again, still waiting to see if he would say something different now that everything was clear. He didn't. He said, Mom did pay for most of it. That was when something inside me settled completely. Not anger. Clarity. Because suddenly the whole last year made sense. Linda choosing the venue. Linda choosing the guest list. Linda deciding the catering. Linda making comments about how expensive everything was. And Ethan always saying the same thing. Just let her handle it. I looked back at the SUV filled with our gifts. Then you should probably return those to the guests. Linda blinked. What? If the gifts are reimbursement for the wedding, then technically they weren't gifts to us. Amanda said, That's ridiculous. Is it? I said, because the cards all say for Katie and Ethan. Linda stepped closer to me. You're being difficult for no reason. No, I said. I'm being clear. Ethan looked uncomfortable now. Katie, we can talk about this privately. We are talking about it. Linda shook her head again. This is exactly why finances should stay under family management. That sentence made something click in my brain. Because suddenly I remembered a conversation from 6 months earlier. Something Ethan had said casually while we were discussing apartments. He had said, my parents usually help manage big financial decisions. At the time I thought he meant advice. Now I realized he meant something else. I looked at him. Ethan, whose account were we supposed to put the wedding money in? He hesitated. That was enough of an answer. Linda said it for him. The family account. I stared at her. The what? She said it like it was normal. All major family finances go through it. I felt like the ground had shifted slightly under my feet. How many people have access to that account? Linda answered immediately. Me. Ethan. And his father. I looked at Ethan. You were planning to put our wedding money in an account your parents control? He opened his mouth. Then closed it again. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. But none of them realized the biggest problem yet. Because the money wasn't just in my account. It was somewhere they would never be able to touch. Linda kept staring at me like I had just stolen something from her house. You need to transfer that money, she said. To where? The family account. I looked at Ethan. He still hadn't said the words himself. That told me he expected the same thing, he just didn't want to be the one saying it. I'm not doing that, I said. Linda stepped closer. You don't understand how things work in this family. I think I understand perfectly. Amanda picked up one of the fake envelopes from the box. So you planned this? Yes. Ethan shook his head. This is crazy. You thought my family was going to steal from you. I didn't answer immediately. Instead I pointed at the SUV behind them. Ethan, your mother just put every wedding gift into her car. No one argued with that. Because they couldn't. Linda crossed her arms. We paid for the wedding. You chose the wedding. That's not the point. I took a slow breath. It is the point. Ethan stepped in between us like he was trying to calm things down. Katie, we'll sort this out later. Just move the money into the account and we'll figure everything out from there. That was the moment I knew he still didn't understand what was actually happening. I said, I can't. Linda frowned. What do you mean you can't? Because it's already gone. Everyone went still. Ethan blinked. Gone where? I looked at him. I transferred it. Linda let out a short laugh. To who? Your parents. No. Then where? I said, a trust. The confusion on their faces was almost identical. Ethan asked, what trust? The one my grandfather set up years ago. Linda looked annoyed. That doesn't make any sense. It does if you understand how it works. Amanda said, you're saying you locked the money away? Yes. Linda shook her head like she was hearing nonsense. Just call the bank and move it. I can't. Why not? Because the trust requires 2 signatures. Ethan looked at me. Yours and who else? I met his eyes. Mine and my husband's. For a second he looked relieved. Then we'll fix it later today. I slowly shook my head. No. He frowned. What do you mean no? I said the next sentence very calmly. The trust doesn't recognize you as my husband yet. Nobody spoke. Amanda looked confused. What are you talking about? I said, the paperwork hasn't been filed. Ethan's face changed. Yes, it has. No. He stared at me. Katie, we signed the marriage license last night. Yes. And the officiant submitted it. Not yet. The silence returned again. Linda asked, why wouldn't it be submitted? I looked at Ethan. Because I asked the officiant to hold it for 72 hours. His expression went from confusion to something sharper. You did what? I wanted a cooling-off period. Amanda said, that's not even a thing. It is if the officiant agrees. Linda's voice dropped. You're telling me you got married yesterday and the marriage isn't even legally filed? Yes. Ethan stared at me like he was seeing a completely different person. Why would you do that? I looked around at all of them. At the SUV filled with gifts. At Linda standing there like she already owned our finances. At Ethan who still hadn't defended me once. And I said the truth. Because I wanted to see what your family would do when money was involved. No one moved. And now I know. For a moment nobody spoke. Ethan looked like he was trying to process several things at once. You said a test, he said. Yes. Linda laughed, but it didn't sound amused. So this whole thing was a trap. No, I said. It was a precaution. Amanda shook her head. This is insane. Maybe it was. But standing there in that parking lot watching my mother-in-law claim our wedding gifts like they were hers, it didn't feel insane at all. It felt necessary. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. You could have talked to me. I tried. When? Every time I asked about finances and you said your parents handle things better. He didn't answer that. Linda stepped forward again. This little stunt doesn't change anything. It actually changes everything. How? Because legally we're not married yet. Ethan looked at me again. Katie, stop saying that like it's normal. It is normal. The paperwork hasn't been filed. He shook his head. So what are you saying? I pointed at the SUV. I'm saying this morning told me everything I needed to know. Linda cut in. You're overreacting. Am I? Yes. Families share resources. Families don't confiscate wedding gifts. Amanda muttered something under her breath. Linda ignored it. You're making a scene over money that should be helping pay for the wedding. That wedding was your project, I said. Not mine. That comment landed harder than I expected. As it was true. Linda had chosen almost everything. The venue. The catering. Even the seating chart. I had gone along with it because Ethan kept saying the same thing. It's easier if Mom handles it. Now I understood why. Ethan looked at the ground for a few seconds. Then he said, so what now? It was the first honest question anyone had asked. I answered it honestly. Now we decide if we're actually getting married. Linda stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You already had the wedding. That was a ceremony. Amanda said, you're serious? Yes. Ethan's voice got quiet. So you're saying if I don't agree with you right now, you'll just walk away? That's exactly what I'm saying. Another long silence. Cars kept driving past us. Suitcases rolled across the pavement from other guests checking out. Life around us was moving normally while our entire situation hung in the air. Linda finally said, Ethan, don't entertain this. He looked at her. Then he looked at me. And for the first time that morning, he didn't answer his mother immediately. That alone changed the atmosphere. But Linda noticed it too. Ethan, she said, this is manipulation. He didn't look away from me. He said, Mom, give us a minute. She looked stunned. What? Just, give us a minute. Amanda looked between them like she had never seen that happen before. Linda didn't move. Then Ethan said something he apparently had never said to her before. Please. She stared at him for a few seconds. Then she got into the SUV without another word. Amanda followed her. The doors slammed shut. Now it was just Ethan and me standing in the parking lot. He looked tired. So this is real, he said. Yes. The money's locked away. Yes. And the marriage isn't filed yet. Yes. He nodded slowly. Then he asked the question I had been waiting for. What exactly do you want from me? I looked at the car where his mother was sitting. Then I looked back at him. I want to know if you're marrying me, or if you're marrying your family. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked toward the SUV where his mother and sister were sitting. Linda was watching us through the windshield. Then he looked back at me. You're asking me to choose. Yes. That's not fair. Neither is starting a marriage where your parents control our money. He walked a few steps away and stopped near the curb. For a minute he just stood there. I didn't follow him. Finally he said, "You know they helped me my whole life." "I know. They paid for college. They helped with my first apartment." "I know that too." He nodded slowly like he was thinking through something he had never questioned before. "But that doesn't mean they run our marriage," I said. He turned around. "They're not running it." I pointed at the SUV. "Ethan, your mother just tried to take every gift from our wedding." He didn't argue with that this time. That was progress. But then he said something that made the whole situation clear again. "She was just trying to protect the family finances." I looked at him for a few seconds. Then I said quietly, "That sentence right there is the problem." He didn't respond. The car door opened behind him. Linda stepped out. She had obviously decided the conversation had gone on long enough. "Ethan," she said, "we're leaving." He looked at her, then at me. And I realized something. He still hadn't made a decision. Not really. And that hesitation told me the answer might already be there. Ethan looked at me one more time. Then he looked back at his mother. Linda was standing next to the SUV with the keys in her hand, waiting like the decision had already been made. "Ethan," she said again, "we're leaving." He hesitated. Just for a moment. I didn't say anything. I didn't try to convince him. At that point I didn't need to. Because whatever he chose in the next few seconds would tell me exactly what my life would look like if I stayed. Finally he walked toward the SUV. Not fast. Not confident. But he walked. He stopped next to the driver's door where Linda was standing. She handed him the keys like it was the most natural thing in the world. And that was it. That was the answer. He didn't even look back at me when he got into the car. Amanda was already in the passenger seat. Linda sat in the back. The engine started. For a second I thought maybe Ethan would open the door again. Maybe he would come back and say something different. He didn't. The SUV pulled out of the parking lot with every wedding gift still in the trunk. I stood there watching it disappear down the street. Then my phone buzzed. A message from the officiant. "Just checking. Do you still want me to hold the marriage paperwork until tomorrow?" I looked at the empty road for a moment. Then I typed back one sentence. "You can shred it. You can shred it. You can shred it."